Your voice, your opinion, your community. Fact TV, free speech protected.
Good day. This is Kris Roberts, your host of the Long Road. Today we're going to be talking about the city of Keene. Where has the city of Keene come from? Where is the city of Keene going? We hear all the time about how we need these masterful plans and stuff, whether it's bike lanes, walkable lanes, roundabouts. So we're talking about a lot of really nice things for the city. One of the questions is, what is the return on the investment? Are we spending millions and millions of dollars to bring industry, bring businesses in to Keene? Have we been temporarily flabbergasted with all this COVID-19 money, infrastructure money, the trillions of dollars that came in? And a lot of this money has helped reduce over the past couple of years our tax burden from $38 per thousand down to about $32. The money for COVID starts running out this year. Basically, after next year, it's going to be gone. So far, we had a city council, we had a meeting, and people were saying, well, there's plenty of COVID money out there, unspent money. Yes, right now there's about $300 billion out of those trillions of dollars that was put out there that hasn't been spent. For anybody who's been listening to the news and about the debt deadline, default deadline, which could be easy as early as June 1st, one of the things that the Republicans want is that $300 billion that hasn't been spent to be clawed back in, because governments at all levels have a way of saying, well, there's money available, what can we spend it on? And sometimes when you spend it, you may spend it on something that seems you really didn't need, but you do it, but then you have to keep spending money all the years going forward. I first came to Keene in 1972 to go to college, Keene State College, a small college, about 2,500 people. I graduated in 1977, spent my time in the Marine Corps, living in different places, and I came back to Keene in 2000 because my wife's family was here in Keene. There's some pretty interesting things about Keene, which I'll probably tick off some people. But, in the 70s and 80s, Keene was a real small clique town. Other businesses were not allowed in the town. The Monadnock place they were thinking of building that before I graduated. And it took over 18 years for them to get the permits and everything to be able to build in an old cornfield. But that's the way Keene was. The Melanson firm, basically all the major roofing projects went to Melanson's, whether it was a city project, a college project, or a business project. Kingsbury, it employed a lot of people, did not pay them a lot of money, but kept them pretty much employed. Officers or people that worked in some of the high positions in Kingsbury ended up finding themselves on the city council and on the school board. And it just went on and on. When you looked at the committees, like the planning board, the zoning board, the conservation board, they were appointed, and when you look at the people that were appointed, then you could see, and when you look at the census data, they just made it almost impossible to build a single-family house in Keene. It was just, I was going through the numbers, it was just really kind of unbelievable. Sometimes 10, maybe 15. There was at least 1 year where there was 0 housing permits issued for a single-family house. And even like 1 year, there was like 15 that was issued for a single-family house construction. But just because it's constructed, a permit is given out, doesn't mean the house is ever constructed. I remember when I went to, was getting ready to go Okinawa. I had a 1.5-year-old daughter, and my wife was pregnant. I was a Marine captain. I was making good money. And the Court Street Court Street condos were for sale. And you can't believe, maybe some could, how difficult the realtor made it for me. I had to jump through all kind of hoops just to buy a condo that was townhouse that was $37,900. That's all it was. I had the money for the down payment. There was ways I could get it done. And it was important to me to have a place for my family to live. It was really important to me that if something happened to me, my family would have a place of their own for at least until they decide what to go on. Because if you live in base housing and you die in active duty, your family has 30 days to get out. And so you really wanted a place. So they made it extremely, extremely difficult for me to do it. And the reason I think that I was only able to get the house was because my father-in-law, my wife's father, was an executive vice president, one of the firms, was in the Rotary Club, was in Kiwanis, and knew additional people. So that got me in. I also noticed the way the banks worked. The banks were picky and choosy, maybe a little bit more than they should be when people wanted to buy property or get loans. And So basically, it was a really close-knit community, and they weren't letting people in. They weren't letting businesses in. They weren't paying people that well. There was a real intermixing between the businesses and local government. It was kind of a wash my hand, I wash your hand, and the small group of people were happy. A lot of property was into conservation. You put the land in conservation, you don't have to pay taxes on it. And you can say, I left this land in perpetuity to the citizens of Keene. But you know what? If I give 10 acres of land that was worth, say, $100,000 on a normal year, like a couple of years ago, I would have to pay $3,500 in taxes. But, I'm getting old. I'll do that as a donation, put it in conservation to so I don't have to pay taxes on it anymore. So over the course of that 10 years, first 10 years, the city of Keene would lose about $35,000 in taxes. So everybody else who owned property would have to make up for that $35,000 of lost tax revenue. Plus the city of Keene would now have to pay to maintain that property. Maybe they could sell off some trees and stuff like that to recoup some, but that would happen. And the other part is if you give the land a lot, put a land in conservation, then there is tough for people to bring a business to Keene. Like I said, 18 years to bring the marketplace, Monadnock Marketplace, and when they were trying to bring Monadnock Marketplace, they were going to Home Depot. Well, we don't like your color of pumpkin, orange. We want a different color. Then they went to Target and said, well, we don't really like your red balls. Can you change them a little bit? Knowing fully well the coloring of Target, the red ball at Target, the things on Home Depot, the same thing with Kohl's. They're all trademarked. If you change it once, then you run the risk of losing your trademark. They were doing so many things to say, yeah, we want to open it, we want to be pro-business, but at the same time trying to make it almost impossible to do it. But then, all of a sudden in the late 1990s or mid-1990s, Keene State College decided it was going to grow. So it worked, and it came up with money, and it decided to build new dorms. It decided to build a new cafeteria, pondside, all that. It was funny to watch how they were going up, and it repeated at a number of government projects and everything. It was kind of like, oh, they're behind schedule. And then whether the finance person at the college or the facilities person at the college or at a high school in some of the other surrounding communities of middle school, they tend to look the other way. And then, for example, when one part, there was a number of individuals that lived in Pearl Street and came and did the project. And once they got ahead of schedule and everything, they disappeared. Same thing on the 100-night shelter by my house. Out-of-state individuals came in, did a bunch of the work. Once they did the work, they disappeared. And then all the other local contractors were to come in. So, but when Keene State started building all these, they need people to come in. So Keene State wasn't building enough, fast enough. Then all of a sudden, Keene State got over 5,000 individuals. And then of those 5,000, only about 50% were living on campus. Those other 50% were living off campus. And if you go look back, I think at the time in the 90s and early 2000s, I think at least 6 of the 15 city councilors were property owners. And all of a sudden, they were convincing people, hey, sell your house. You can get a lot of money. So a lot of people that had worked at Kingsbury or retired and everything, who had been able to get the houses under the GI Bill, sold their houses. Guess what? They couldn't find any other houses to buy because they didn't have the income to pay for the new house. Just like lately, past couple of years, people say, hey, I sold my house. But they didn't have any place that they could buy. If you were an apartment owner, you lived in an apartment, there's 2 people, one the house across the street, and from where I live, one across around the corner where individual worked at FedEx and my wife. The elderly couple on the across the street, their rent went up to $2,400. The one on South Street went up to $2,200 per month. So we're not throwing you out. You can pay as long as you pay. And so that's when a lot of people started moving because they couldn't afford to live in Keene. Families couldn't afford to live in Keene because we had landlords that stuffed up these rooms and charging $500, $600, $700 a room in there. So we had landlords, local landlords, bunch of them, even city councilors, that were making a lot of money. There were landlords that were professors at the college, other ones that worked at the college that were making a lot of money. And they didn't care. They were making money. Even going back when I was here going to college, I lived at 9 Blake Street. That place was owned by 2 college professors. And I lived in the basement in a little plywood stuff area that was so cold, especially in the winter. I went to bed with PJs and sweatpants and everything on to stay warm. We had houses in the fire department in the city knew that were death traps. We were just hoping that we would not get a fire like some of the other colleges around the country and have 3, 4, 5 people get killed. And so that's the way Keene was going. And I still say it right now, is who dies first? Does the city of Keene die first, or do the old guard die first? And people go, oh no, Keene's doing good, Keene's doing good. We spent $10 million on a roundabout. We're looking to spend $14, $18 million in the center of town. All different kinds of things. Okay? Is Keene a growing city? No. Because go back to two things. Let's go back to the college. I looked at the Newsweek World Review, and it puts all the colleges, okay? To fill their dorms and everything, Keene State kept lowering and lowering and lowering their standards. There was some in there when I looked at the report that didn't even get a 2.0 that were being accepted into Keene State College. And then a lot of the kids were troublemakers. We had the riots when in 2013, I was in Toronto, Canada, and I was watching it on TV by the Keene State College students flipping over a car in front of the post office. Then it was the Keene State riots of 2014, where they were doing a bunch of stuff. Because if you look, there's plenty of stuff, years and years and years, there's a pattern of parties, wild stuff. There was stuff on a year before Winchester that the police had to just block off that area between, I can't think of the car dealership in Winchester Street and those houses just to contain him. And so Keene got a bad reputation. Keene State College, the view of Keene State College as a quality school dropped down. You started seeing the little things like bumper stickers, kind of, sort of college, or keep sending checks. They had a very bad president, which they fortunately got rid of. Keene State College is rebounding now, but it's going to take a long time for Keene State College, if ever, will ever regain the reputation that it had. And because of some people made a lot of money on the growth of Keene State College, the city of Keene has suffered. Okay, when I look at the U.S. Census, the population for Keene, based on the census, the 2020 census, Keene was 2010, it was 23,409. 2020, it was 23,047. The estimate on July 1st, 2022 was 22,774. So it keeps dropping. And Keene is projected to keep on dropping between 0.15 and 0.2% for the next 10 years. And so what you go is, wait a minute. We keep talking, we've been spending all kinds of money trying to bring people into Keene. We worked with the broadband. We're the last mile. There was money there to upgrade the broadband. Well, that company had to be sold because they were losing so much money. That was in Medic. And so it just isn't changing. Okay, and the other part in what is really Keene, the median age in Keene right now is 36.6. That means half the people are above and half people are below. But for the males, it's 33.6. And for the female, it's 38.8. For some reason, Keene's female population, which is about 52 to 48, and the median population is over 5 years older than the males. When we go and talk about pay, you can see why that's a big negative effect for Keene. You know, we all know that Keene is basically white, and basically 92.8% of the people in Keene are white. Basically 3% of the Keene are biracial. So basically between white and two or more races, that's 95% of Keene. Keene has 390 Black or African Americans, 358 Asians, 125 other race, 82 Native Americans, and 17 Hawaiian or Pacific Islanders. And when we look at Keene, there's 19,434 adults in Keene. That's basically from age 16 above. Over 4,100 are 65 and older. So almost 20% of the people in Keene are 65 and older. And that doesn't bode very well, because when you're saying, say almost 4,200, of those 4,200, you could, being 65 and older, you could very easily say, well, good chance at least 3,600 are out of the workforce. Because right now, 6% of the people in Keene are over 80. 7% is 70 to 79. So 13% of the population of Keene is 70 or older. That doesn't bode well for the future of Keene. Okay, when you look at that, when the sex ratio, the females make up 51.3% to the male 48.7%. 53% of the families in Keene own their own homes. And which isn't too bad, but that's lower than the New Hampshire rate of about 67%. When you look at it, and it's hard to believe, that's 457 adults in Keene have less than a 9th grade education. Another 574 are 9th to 12th grade. So basically more than 1,000 adults, 5% of the in this one, it's about 7% of the adults are not high school graduates. 23% are graduates, 19% have started college but haven't finished, 7% have got an associate's degree, 27 have a bachelor's degree, and 15% have a graduate degree. When we go and look at it, when we to white, there's 5,807. Hispanic have 7. 2 or more races have 41. Black 112. Asian 87. And other race 57. And The Native Americans have 26 people and adults, and only 3% of them have graduated from high school. Which is not very healthy. So when I said it was important when we said about the percentages of females and females being medium age being over 5 years older than males, the average income in Keene is $41,928. Basically, if you're working full time, that comes out to $20 an hour. But of that, the average wage for males is $48,181, while the average full-time for females is $35,320. So the females, which make up the majority, get $13,000 less than the males. Less than ninth grade for males is when you look at people who did not even make it to high school, less than ninth grade males, they average $41,250 a year. They make $6,000 more than the average female. The female high school graduate in Keene makes about $31,140. That's over. Of that, males make $41,000, females make $20,000. Because in Keene, a female high school graduate, you will see them in Walmart, McDonald's, and some of the other businesses that just don't pay. And so you go to Dunkin' Donuts, the woman there could be a high school graduate, and the guy next right to her could be a ninth grade dropout. And that ninth grade dropout, chances are he's going to make more than that female high school graduate. Some college is 36. Males get 41,000, women get 33. A bachelor's degree, the average salary for someone with a bachelor's degree in Keene is $50,000. A male gets 56. And a female 41. So if a female and a male, and we both graduated from Keene State College, there's going to be on average a $15,000 difference for the female. Graduate degree, master's, is $60,000. But this is the most sickening, really, of all. A male with a graduate degree, master's, CPA, lawyer, will get about $73,000. The equivalent female will get $49,000. So a female gets a master's degree, a male gets a master's degree. The male stands to make on an average of $24,000 a year than the female. Keene, we like to say Keene is a really good place. Keene has a pretty high poverty rate. Keene has a higher poverty rate than the United States. Keene has a higher poverty rate than the state of New Hampshire. In Keene, in this one right here, based on the projections of 2023, there are 2,073 white people, or 11.2% of all white people in Keene live in poverty. So basically, on an average, if 10 people are walking down Main Street, one is in poverty. Okay? The multiple races, there's 61, and it's 12.9% in poverty. There's 347 black people in Keene. 59% live in poverty, or 17%. Others, there's 125, and only 2 live in poverty. In Native Americans, the average Native American lives 215.3% below the poverty line. And so those who worked full-time, the poverty, among those workers, poverty level full-time past 12 months, almost 2.5% of people working full-time are below the poverty level. And if you work part-time, you were 19% below the poverty level. And those who didn't work all were 16.7. Imagine that, you're working, and you're working part-time, and 1 out of every 5 part-time workers in Keene are below the poverty level. But here's where education. If you didn't finish 9th grade, you have almost a 27% chance of being below the poverty level. 1 out of every 4 people who did not finish 9th grade who live in Keene are below the poverty level. 12% of the high school graduates who live in Keene are below the poverty level. A little bit more than 9% of the people who have attended college are below the poverty level. And almost 2.5% of the people who have bachelor's and graduate degrees live below the poverty level. 77% of the female unemployed in Keene live in poverty. Male unemployment, 33 are in poverty. Female working full-time, 8% in poverty. Males working full-time, 6% in poverty. And you go, those numbers are not very good. Like the house. In Keene, the median is $57,000. 50% of the households in Keene make less than $57,000. That's everybody 16 and above working in that house. So you can have 3 people just graduated from college living in a house. That counts, whatever they make. The average house hold is $76,000. For married families, the median up and below, that's $89,000, because for a lot of married families, both partners are married. But in Keene, we're broken down into 5 wards. Okay, if you go to Ward 4 out past the Y and all the nice houses, that number is quite high. It's over 6 figures. But if you go in Ward 1 and Ward 2, those numbers can be quite low at about 30%, about $30,000. Okay. How do we look for veterans? Right now, of course, the number goes down. There's 1,572 veterans in Keene, which is 1,391 a male, 181 a female. And if you want to see living history, which we're going to lose pretty soon, we only have, at this time, 34 World War II veterans, 119 Korean War veterans, 372 Gulf War, 425. In Vietnam era is 413. And it's amazing how many people claim they're Vietnam veterans. We have more Vietnam veterans now in the United States, people claiming they were Vietnam veterans now than there ever fought the war. The biggest number of veterans are 35 to 54. Those are the Iraqi. The number two is 411, or basically pretty close to 25% of all the veterans in Keene are over 75. In 65 to 74, 324. 55 to 64 is 148. And so more than half the veterans in Keene are 65 and older. Of the veterans in Keene, almost 9.5% of the veterans in Keene live below the poverty rate, and almost 1 out of every 4 veterans that live in Keene are disabled. And so in Keene, we don't have very many foreigners in Keene. 95% of the people that live in Keene were born in the United States. 44% of the people living in Keene were born in New Hampshire. And 2% of the residents in Keene are not U.S. citizens. And the vast majority of the ones that are living in here are from Asia. And non-citizens include legal permanent resident, green card holders, international students, temporary workers, Romanian migrants, and illegal migrants. Some of the illegals get counted, other times they don't. And Asia is a pretty big place because if you're from India or you're from China, Japan, or Korea, you all fall in that area. I found is like a little strange, but the black adults, 90% of them work. Hispanic, about 63%. Asian, almost 70%. Whites, about 62%. Non-Hispanic, white, about 61%. Other races, about 58%. 2 or more races, 53%. And Native Americans, 45%. So, except for the Native Americans that really have a hard time finding jobs, people in Keene should be reaching out and figuring out how we can help the Native Americans become more successful but the people of color have a higher employment rate in Keene than people that are white. Basically, Keene was grown at 1.1, 1.5, but their population is going down, and they're projected by 2029, up until 2029, continuing losing people every year. And which is not good. Keene has to find a way to start attracting more people. One of the things when we looked in, there were 626 businesses in Keene. Okay. The men own 318 of those businesses, but only 52 of the businesses in Keene are women-owned. The minority-owned building, it was less than 25, so statistically it didn't count. Non-minority, so 398 are white-owned. Veterans only own 29 businesses in Keene. And so, again, the numbers are not looking very good. So when you go in and start looking at stuff, for example, the biggest employer in Keene is Cheshire Medical Center, Dartmouth-Hitchcock Clinic. They employ 1,600 people. C&S Wholesale Grocers employs 1,200. In Keene School District employs 1,100. The National Grain Mutual is down to 311. They've dropped hundreds. Keene State Colleges is 700. So when you look at it, between Cheshire Medical, Keene State, and SAU, Keene School District, that's 4,100%. 4,100 of the people that work in Keene work in that area, in those 4 areas. And so in 2021, there was 10,800. And so 4,100 of those were in those 4 places, which meant that about 38% of the people that do that work in those areas. The total rate in Keene per thousand for 2021 was $31.28, and that was based on 94.2% of what it should be, and so the full value was $28.29. Okay, when you look at the jobs in Keene, good producing Keene, industrial. 10 years ago, in 2011, there was 2,800. Now it's down to 2,100. Their weekly pay was from $1,000 to $1,200, so it's only going up $200 in the last 10 years. Service providers, Their average employment was 13,500. Now they've dropped down to 12,000. Those are people that don't count people that don't live in Keene, who drive in every morning. They used to pay $775. Now they're up to $1,000. Total private industry is 16,000. So we have about 6,000 people who do not live in Keene that come in every single day to work. And that number has dropped over 2,000 in the past. Government employees, federal, state, and local, was 2,400 in 2011. That's dropped down to 1,600, about 800 less. In total, private and plus government was 18,600. It's now down to 15,800. The people who the average government weekly wage is $11.31 compared to the high of $12.31 for manufacturing. And so state and federal and local government employees here do not get much higher than the the average worker in Keene. And so when I go in and I look at this, and this is what I like to look at, and because these are important. So yeah, like when he talked about poverty, 13% of the children in Keene live in poverty. So when you go to the school, 1 out of 7 kids who are going to school live in poverty. And for a lot of them, the only really good meal they get is when they get the free lunch. 7% of the seniors over 65 live in poverty. The only amount of money they get is Social Security. And so when you wonder why Keene, why we get so many low-income housing, senior housing being built in Keene, because you look at those numbers. But when you look at a number of 13% of the children in poverty, 7% of the seniors in poverty, they're not really contributing to the economic engine that's needed for growth. When even go in, the women in Keene are not having babies. When we look at the whole area of Winchester, which is called the metro area, Keene is 3.4. The metro area is 3.7. And New Hampshire is 4.7. And so Keene, the women in Keene are averaging about 1.5 less children. Only 5% of the women between 25 and 29 gave birth last year. 30 to 35 is 11%. 35 to 39 was the 14%. That was delayed births on for people. The medium value of an owner-occupied house is $193,000. 1% of the houses are over $5,000. Okay, so 15% of the houses in Keene cost over $300,000. So 10% of the houses in Keene are worth $100K. 44% of the houses in Keene are $100 to $200K. And a lot of those houses were built before 1940. And so, again, 96% of the people in Keene speak English, and 93% of the people only speak English. How is Keene growing compared to the rest of the country? In 1990, Keene was 1,204th largest city in the country. In 2010, it was the 1,523rd largest city in the country. And now it's the 1,680th largest community in the country. Keene just isn't growing for people. So when you sit down and you decide, do I spend millions of dollars on a parking garage, or do I spend all this money on a nice roundabout, or do I do this, or do I do that? You have to ask, where does the money come from? Grants don't come out of mid-air, okay? And if I go say a project's $14 million, by the time I'm digging, it's going to be more. It's almost impossible to get a project to come in on cost. Things are going up, or you're going to have this change order, all these things going on. Okay? If we're not building single-family houses, for example, the old Roosevelt School, the community college, they're going to convert that into housing. Okay? But there's not going to be housing for people that are going to have families. They converted the Colonial Mill into housing. Excuse me. $1,400 to $2,700 a month. Go in that parking lot and see how many out-of-state cars they're parking there. Go behind the housing behind the old middle school. Again, look at all the out-of-state cars parked there. We, the leadership in Keene, have to get ready to look at the bigger picture. Not what's going to benefit people here now, but what's going to benefit the people going forward. So this is it. I just want to thank everybody for listening, and hopefully I didn't overwhelm you with all these numbers. Thank you, and have a good day, and keep dry.